Hey everybody, Nature Kim here. I just thought that we would take the day to look at some of the plants that are coming up in spring, see what we may find in our yard. So we'll take a look at my yard and then we'll go on a hike later on today and take a look at what we might find out on some of our trails out in the wild. So first we're gonna take a look at my garden. I've started cleaning out my garden, getting ready to start planting some things that might grow in colder weather since it still gets pretty chilly at night. So some of the things I'm going to plant are going to be like spinach and kale, a lot of greens, because I love to eat a lot of salad. I hope you like to eat your greens too. But I have to clear out my garden first to get ready to plant some of those things. But I have some things that are in my garden that come back every single year that I don't have to keep planting. And those kind of plants we call perennials. So perennials are plants that come back every single year. So some of those things that you might find in your yard might be maybe some daisies, maybe some daffodils, irises, different things like that. So we'll look for some of those things. But the other plants that I'm going to plant, like my spinach and my lettuce and my kale, sometimes when I put in pansy flowers, those are all plants that we call annuals, because that means I have to plant them every single year because it's a little too cold for them to be able to sleep here and come back the next year. So let's go on over to my garden and see what we can find. All right, so we're coming up on the first bed here, and this is one plant that I particularly really like to cook with, and it's probably my favorite one. So this here is called thyme. So not like thyme that we keep track of every day as to what time it is, but thyme, which is spelled Thyme. So that's the name of this plant, and that's how you spell thyme. The kind of time that we use to keep track of when we need to go do something is spelled T-I-M-E. So they're spelled different, but they sound alike. But this is thyme. It has a kind of a lemony taste, but I like to use it a lot in some of my cooking. You'll have to ask your parents if they like to use this in some of their cooking as well. But when I cook with it, I only use the leaves and not the stems. So this is another plant that I have. This one I think I'm gonna have to replant though. It does not like cold weather at all. It actually likes it to grow in warmer places, but it's called lemongrass. And I like to use it in a lot of my Thai dishes when I cook. And I usually use the stalk, but as you can see, it's pretty brown, no green, whereas on the thyme over here, we can see some of the green leaves on that. This is another plant, few leaves on it. And you know, sometimes when you're not sure what some of the herbs are in your garden, you can rub your fingers on the leaf, and then you can take your fingers and smell your fingers, and it might give you a clue as to what that might be. So that right there, for me just rubbing it and smelling, I know that's sage, and that's actually a pineapple sage. So let's see what else we see. Here's the one that might be a favorite to you and you don't even know it. So this one's really greening up and coming back. Another one of the perennials. This right here is called oregano. So can you think of something that you might love to eat that has oregano in it? Well, I will go ahead and tell you a couple of dishes. So a lot of pasta dishes will have it, because sometimes tomato sauce will be in it. We'll have oregano in it, but also it's a very favorite topping for pizza. So not a topping kind of like the cheese, but it's more of the seasoning, kind of like salt and pepper. So let's see, I got some more sage right here. And this is one of my favorite ones. And the spring, but it looks like somebody's already been eating that. Can you see where it's been a little nipped off at the top? That's for my rabbit visitor that I have in my yard. But this is called chives, and chives is a member of the onion family. Really, really yummy. So I like to chop these up and use them in salad dressings and put them in salads and different things like that. But it looks like rabbits just like to have them plain. So let's take a look at this plant here. This is one that is more of an annual in Massachusetts because it cannot survive the winter, so I have to plant it every year, but it's one of my favorite herbs that I use. This is called rosemary. You can see it's kind of long. So I'm getting ready to plant another one to be able to have for this year, but I keep trying to keep it over the winter, but it never grows back. But in warmer places and in other countries around the world, like Italy, they become really large bushes and will come back year after year. So let's see what else. I've got this one right here. This is called lemon balm. And I tend to grow this one in my gardens more because it keeps a lot of insects away. Insects like to come into my garden and eat up a lot of my plants, so they don't tend to like the lemon balm. So I usually grow that, but sometimes I'll use it to make a little bit of a lemony tea with. So let's see, over there I've got that all cleared up. I've got my trellis for my peas and beans. Getting ready to plant some beans over there. A lot of peas. I love English peas in the spring, so I'm getting ready to plant those. This is another one. This is another perennial that comes back every year. This is what we call bee balm. I really like the purple kind of on the edges of that leaf. And this right over here is like the chives that we saw earlier that the rabbits have been eating, but this one is called garlic chives. So it has more of a garlicky flavor to them. They're really nice to chop up. But look, I've already got a little visitor on here. What is that? See that? That's a little beetle there. It's very much in the same family as some of our fireflies. So it looks like that. I wonder if that beetle is snacking on this, or just resting in the sun and warming up. But there's some other things in the garden here that I don't really want, that I see. This is one of them. You see this plant right here? Anybody know what that is? The top of it actually looks like the seed that planted it. It has kind of two leaves here. So this is actually a baby maple tree. Does anybody want to have a maple tree growing in the middle of their garden? No, I don't think so. But that little maple tree grew from a seed that looks just like this. And in the fall, they kind of look like little helicopters. And they fall like helicopters. That's kind of spin around. But then they get in the ground. And then up in the spring grows a little baby maple tree. Now, if I were to leave that, it could grow into a really big maple tree. But since I'm trying to grow a lot of herbs and vegetables and fruits, I'm gonna pull this one up. And you can see kind of the root in there. And I'm gonna get rid of that. So now let's take a look at some things we might find around the yard. So here I've got some green plants that are coming up here. These are going to become irises. So they'll be really tall plants, and they'll end up having some really pretty purple flowers on them. But very different from these little purple flowers, which we can actually find here in the grass. So the irises will be really, really tall and big. These are really, really tiny and grow in our grass. These are a little bit more wild. So let's see what else we can find as well. So not everything's blooming yet, but a lot of things are starting to get ready to bloom. So you can see some little buds here on this plant. This is called the hydrangea plant. So that'll have some really big blossoms later on as we get closer to summer. But then all around on the ground, I've got lots of mint growing. So this, just like the garden, if you rub that between your fingers and smell, it smells just like mint. And this is one of my favorites of the spring. This doesn't have its blossoms yet either, but they are getting ready to flower. This is called a lilac, and particularly this one's called a Kimberly lilac. Why do you think I might want to buy a Kimberly lilac? So I happen to have a picture of what that will look like in the spring. See where it says Miss Kim on there? Isn't that great? So one other thing over here is something that you might like to eat that's growing right here. Do you see anything you want to eat on here? Probably not yet, but soon enough. So all of these little flowers that are on this tree here are going to become plums. This is a plum tree. So this time of year, if you kind of go around the area in Massachusetts, if you go to a lot of orchards, you're going to find a lot of flowers that look like this. So apple tree blossoms look like this as well. So those are getting ready to bloom out. So if you go to your local apple orchard, where in the fall you might actually go and pick apples, where you're going to find are essentially like the baby apples. So each of these flowers on this tree will eventually turn into plums, but on an apple tree, if you found little flowers like this, they would become apples. So if you get a chance to go with your family, maybe go and visit an apple orchard and see if you could find these flowers. They're really, really pretty to look at. But if you smell them, you have to smell them and see if they smell like the fruit they might become. When I smell these, they don't quite smell like plums yet. Do you think the flowers on the apple tree might smell like apples? Go and see. If you walk around outside in your yard or somewhere around your neighbor, you might find lots of buds like these also coming out of the ground. These are going to be all kinds of other perennials. Remember, perennials are plants that come back every single year. And these are all actually going to become pretty large plants later on. Some of these are going to be what we call lilies. So if you just follow the ground, and sometimes you just have to look really, really close to the ground to find some things, to find all kinds of flowers that are just getting ready to pop up. So it's fun to come out and maybe take a picture of each of these plants each week. Maybe even measure them to see how much they grow every week, week to week. Here's some more hydrangea here. So that's about it for my yard, but one more thing. This is one thing that's growing up all along this post here. See it way up in there. My birds actually like to nest in it. But right now it only has these green leaves. But it's one of the earliest things that's going to grow, and that is a honeysuckle bush. So, and the hummingbirds, when they come back from being down south for the winter time, they love to come up here and find my honeysuckle blossoms and drink nectar, or what we might call flower juice, from them later on. See if you have any vines that look like this, any honeysuckle close to you. All right, let's go see what we can find maybe along the way as we head over to the conservation area to see what we might find out in the woods. What you can see here are a bunch of other flowers that I have found in my neighborhood on the way to the conservation trail. Do any of these look familiar to you? See if you can find some of these in your neighborhood too. So let's explore some more signs of nature with our plants here in the wild. And this is a wetland area in Massachusetts. A lot of wetland areas might look and sound like this in the spring. So some things you might see are some more buds on the trees. Some of these buds might actually turn into little flowers, kind of like the plum tree in my yard. Some may be just more like grasses. You can see here when we come out closer to the water, a lot of different grasses. But these grasses may turn into what we call cattails. So if you can kind of see that stick in the background that has some fluffy stuff on it, that's the one that in the summer and in the fall we might see that looks like a big corn dog on a stick. So, but we call that a cattail. And these are kind of like baby cattails coming up. So these plants come back every single year. So these are perennials, just like some of the other plants like the irises and the lilies in my yard. So let's explore around here a little more, see what else we can find. See some other little green plants starting to come up. Some mosses. Let's see, we could come in here. Oh, this is one plant that I really love to find. This is one of the first plants that you'll actually see in the springtime. It's called a skunk cabbage. And when it first comes up, all you see is this part right here. This is sort of its flower. And its flower, some people call that a monk's hood, but it's also called a spade. And if I could maybe find one, I could show you more about the inside of it. But the skunk cabbage gets its name because if we were to break off one of these leaves right here, or even this spade, it smells like rotting trash. It does not smell so nice, but it keeps a lot of animals from eating it. But it attracts a lot of different kinds of flies that might like rotting meat, and which helps it pollinate itself and be able to have more skunk cabbages in the area. So, and this one can actually come out so early, it can even pop out of the ground when there's still snow on the ground, and that's because it actually gives off a lot of heat, unlike some plants do. So it'll give off a lot of heat. Usually they're about 72 degrees Fahrenheit that this plant will always stay at. And because it's so warm, lots of insects love to come over to it to warm up inside of this flower right here, because it's really nice and warm and toasty on a colder day. So they'll come in and they will warm up inside of its flower, but then pick up some pollen and help pollinate some of the other plants. But one insect that likes to come and visit that might be a honeybee. It'll come in, it'll warm itself up, and it'll move from one skunk cabbage to another skunk cabbage to stay nice and warm, but also continue to pollinate and help out these skunk cabbages. But there are some animals that like to eat them, and a little later on I'll show you a picture, but the black bear loves to come and start eating those in the springtime. Before all the berries come out, they'll come and eat a lot of the skunk cabbage. They'll actually dig it up and they'll eat a lot of the roots of the skunk cabbage called the rhizomes. So sometimes if you see where it looks like a lot of skunk cabbage has been eaten, it's probably going to be from bears. But slugs and pheasants also like to eat it. Once they produce their seeds, wood ducks and bobwhites and ruffed grouse will eat it as well. But it is toxic to people But the Native Americans actually used to love to take skunk cabbage, dry it, and use it as an herbal remedy for epilepsy, toothache, and headaches. And when they would do tattoos, they would sometimes even crush it up and put some of the dyes from the plant inside of their tattoos to keep from getting infections. So there's another one there. So let's take a moment just to take a look out at some of these other plants that we could see out here in the wetland, and take a listen to some of the birds for a minute. You hear that really loud bird in the background? That's the red-winged blackbird. There's actually one right in the middle of my camera in the tree. Did you hear it there? Those are the males calling to some of the females to invite them to nest so that they can lay some eggs this spring. See some of the cattails out in there too. So what are some colors that you see here? We looked at a few flowers, but what are some colors that we see here in the wetlands? And come back over to one of these skunk cabbages too. Take a look. What colors do you see on the skunk cabbage? Looks like somebody might have taken a bite out of this one. Take a look on the inside here. Oop. It's missing its flower. So some other plants that you may see when you're out walking in the woods are going to be one that looks like this. This one you may not even know exists in the woods, but it is one of the delicacies to lots of deer and bears and other animals that live out here. If we come in closer and look, we can see we've got some leaves coming up on it. And then if we look close enough, might see this right here. Look at that. That little flower, see that little flower opening up there? That is going to become a blueberry. This is a wild blueberry bush. So we call it a low bush blueberry. So lots of animals love to come and eat on blueberry. Lots of birds, like I said earlier, bear and deer will come and eat those, and people like to eat them too. Do you? I love to eat blueberries, but usually we never get around to eating these because all the wild animals who live here, because this is their house, don't forget, they will come and eat them before we even get to them. Let's see what else we can find. So let's take a look in the forest and see what we can find here. So this, we were just talking a little bit more about. That is our blueberry bush. Some little baby pine trees here. This is one plant here that stays out all winter long. Later on ends up with a nice little red berry on top of it. So this is called wintergreen. And it gets that name because it's green all winter. But when you think of wintergreen, so like wintergreen gum or mints or maybe even toothpaste, the oils from this plant is actually what gives it the wintergreen flavor. So it has kind of a piney, minty kind of taste to it. It's really, really nice. So let's see what else is in here. as well. So this is one plant that I like to look for. You can find it in the winter also. This is called the princess pine. So it's actually not really a pine tree. It's considered a club moss, and you can find it all over the floor of the forest. It is the princess pine. And later on, when it gets ready to release some spores that have babies, it starts to look like this. It's really kind of what its flower would look like, essentially up at the top. That's really kind of what a New England forest floor is going to look like in the springtime. You just have to keep looking for some of these smaller plants. So when you go out, see if you can find the wintergreen, maybe the princess pine as well. So again, thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed your lesson today. But I challenge all of you to go outside and see if you can find some of these plants out in either your yard or out on a trail somewhere close by, and see if you can find them as well. And make note of maybe some plants that you find that I didn't show you today. So grab your nature journal, maybe have an adult help you write down some of those things or draw them, or maybe you could do something like me and take a phone or an iPad or something else with you and take some pictures and record them. And then you're going to be acting like a scientist and taking your own data as to what is out and about this time of year. Thanks so much. I enjoyed exploring with you today and looking for some of the different plants and flowers, maybe some veggies that were coming up in my garden beds, things around my yard, but also going out into the wetlands and into the forest and looking at some of the plants that were coming up there as well, like looking at the skunk cabbage and the blueberry bush and even the princess pines. So that was a lot of fun. We did not focus too much on the animals today. It was more plants, but I thought since everybody loves animals, I would finish up with one of my favorite springtime stories, and my springtime friend here, the robin. And so that we don't forget about some of those animals that are coming out in spring and what they are doing as well. So we will start with that. This is Home for a Bunny. Some of you might have actually read this one before, but this is one of my favorite springtime stories by Margaret Wise Brown. Spring, 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 sang the frog. Spring, said the groundhog. Spring, 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 sang the robin. It was spring. The leaves burst out, the flowers burst out, and robins burst out of their eggs. It was spring. In the spring, a bunny came down the road. He was going to find a home of his own, a home for a bunny, a home of his own, under a rock, under a stone, under a log, or under the ground. Where would a bunny find a home? Where is your home? He asked the robin. Here, 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 sang the robin. Here in this nest is my home. Here, 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 sang the little robins who were about to fall out of the nest. Here is our home. Not for me, said the bunny. I would fall out of the nest. I would fall on the ground. So we went on looking for a home. Where is your home? He asked the frog. Wog, 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 sang the frog. Wog, 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 under the water, down in the bog. Not for me, said the bunny. Under the water, I would drown in a bog. Oh, look. Do you recognize what that is? We were looking at that earlier. It's a skunk cabbage. So he went on looking for a home. Where do you live? He asked the groundhog. At a log, said the groundhog. Can I come in? Said the bunny. No, you cannot come in my log, said the groundhog. So the bunny went down the road and down the road he went. He was going to find a home of his own, a home for a bunny, a home of his own, under a rock or a log or a stone. Where would a bunny find a home? Down the road and down the road and down the road he went until, what do you think's going to happen? He met a bunny. Where is your home? He asked the bunny. Where do you think the bunny's home is? Here, said the bunny. Here is my home under this rock, under this stone, down under the ground. Here is my home. Can I come in? Said the bunny. Yes, said the bunny. And so he did. So nice of the other bunny to share her home with this one. And that was his home. That bunny home we call a burrow. Maybe if you're out and about, you can be looking for some holes that might be the size of a bunny too, and see if you can find some bunny homes. Thanks so much for sharing with me. I look forward to seeing you all again soon.